The south, and then the north, would soon be under British Empire. But first, the old Caliphate and other northern kingdoms needed to be conquered. They needed a strong hand, technology. The Maxim gun and sheer brute force came to British aid in the northern conquest. The West African Frontier Force commander was assigned to the north. The Caliphate dug deep, vying that the British would never be among them. We're on our way to Kano to trace Frederick Lugard's steps in the Northern Expedition, the acquisition of the Northern Territory. By early 1903, he had succeeded in capturing Borgu, Musa, Kodangura, Ilorin, Bauchi, and even by peaceful arrangements, Bornu. There were two Emirates that stood out, that were the big catches. Kano being the largest in population, a market city with a huge population of 50,000 people in 1903, was a lot of people. And Sokoto, the symbolic crown, the head of all the Emirates. Now, it was Chamberlain's plan that this new force commander be independent of the Royal Niger Company and free of the influence of the flamboyant and sometimes reckless George Golding. Chamberlain needed to establish control over parts of Dahomey and reclaim Borgu and force a French retreat. Once the plans were done, the only outstanding problem remained locating the man for the job. Chamberlain settled for Captain Frederick Daltrey Lugard.
Mr. Joseph Chamberlain, when Colonial Secretary, decided that the British government should cancel the Niger Company's charter and assume direct control. I was appointed to this task as Governor of Northern Nigeria on January the 1st, 1900.
This was 1897, and Lugard, a soldier and sometime mercenary, had served the British Army in India, Sudan, Burma, and notably Nyasaland. He joined the British East Africa Company and was sent to Uganda. Lugard was an otherwise unremarkable man. He was born in Madras, India, the son of a military clergyman and a reverend's daughter. After the 1804 declaration of a jihad by Usmanu Damfodio, the other Hausa states fell: Zamfara, Kano, Daura, Katsina, and Zaria. They were all now headed by appointed and loyal emirs. This established dominance of the Fulani over a network of Emirates. They spread Islam as far south as Ilorin. Lugard knew the northern Nigeria territory fairly well. He'd been here since his days as the commander of the West African Frontier Force in the 1890s. But even back then, the control that the British had of patchy areas of the Northern Territory was now no longer enough. In 1902, he was determined to take the entire Northern Territory. This is what he was to say in his report of the amalgamation. The population of the North, described in 1874 by Barth as the densest in all Africa, had by 1900 dwindled to some 9 millions, owing to intertribal war and above all to the slave raids of the Fulani. From a very early date, the influence of Islam had made itself felt in the North, and the religious revival of the early years of the 19th century had formed the motive for the Fulani conquests, which swept the country from Sokoto in the northwest to Yola, 1,000 miles to the east, and from the Sahara to the confines of the equatorial belt. He was now ready to replace that with British authority. He was ready to take the North. The ancient Kanem Bornu Empire had its Bornu territory in the northeastern portion of the country today. Its revered ruler, the Shehu, enjoyed a near divine status amongst the Kanuri people, and they had remained fiercely independent of any external control for centuries. Straddled in between Fulani country in the west and Bornu in the east were the autonomous Hausa states, prominently Zaria, Kanu, Katsina, and Daura. The Fulbe, now commonly known as the Fulani, spoke Fula. They were pastoralists who probably came down from what is now Sudan. Their features and devotion to Islam very much akin to the Arabs of North Africa. Lugard would embark on this expedition, the task given to him by Joseph Chamberlain, the Secretary of State for the Colonies, with ruthless military precision. He had already shown signs that it had to be him that was handpicked because of his antecedents. Lugard used the Maxim gun in a callously efficient way. It brings to mind the chilling words of Hilaire Belloc. Whatever happens, we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not. The Maxim was the new wave of high technology of its day, invented by Sir Hiram Stevens Maxim. It was a devastating advantage in warfare of the 19th century. The Maxim could fire 600 rounds per minute. A relatively smaller army could deplete a larger cavalry of the bravest of soldiers. Lugard knew and loved the weapon immensely. He had used its prototype in Central Africa and Uganda. He was convinced that it would work successfully in his mission to subdue the Northern Territory. As Lugard set about his bloody campaign, he led the first expedition northwards and attacked Abuja in 1902. As Lugard and his buccaneering force ventured northwards along the river Kaduna, they progressively acquired new territory. At the same time, Lugard made ground by first capturing Bida and Kontagora, and then Bauchi and Gombe, Bolgu, Kaba, Muri, and Bassa, Nasarawa. By January of 1903, the decision to strike that Lugard had always nursed for the last 2 months was taken by him privately. He organized his trusted Colonel Moreland, raised a troop of about 1,000 men, 40 British officers, and 2 Maxim guns. The decision was to go to Kanu because of its strategic importance, to go to Kanu first. Kanu had the reputation of being impregnable because of its city gates and the huge wall that was surrounding the entire emirate. We wanted to go and see the city gates. What, in your opinion, is the importance of the Kano Emirates in the entire Emirate system.
Kano was a commercial center where people came for business, a learning center, industrial center, because in those years, Kano was the place where they weave, the weaving of cloth is in Kano, and the dyeing, coloring it into whatever color you need is Kano cloth. So these are few things which made Kano to be so significant: the industry, the commerce, and the learning.
What was the reason behind the war? Why a war?
Very good question. The war was for protection. Protection against enemies. You know, there were so many wars by that time.
The Great Wall of Kano. It's a 1,000-year history, built commencing about 1095. This had the impression of creating a totally impregnable city-state, surrounding about 14 kilometers of geographic area. In parts of the city, it reaches up to 50 feet. It's a massive piece of architecture and engineering, made of clear brick wall. In parts of the city, the width, the thickness of the wall is said to reach about 20 feet. The city-state had the geographic advantage as a military defense strategy as well, to ensure that it fortified itself against any sort of action. And in 13 places, it's punctuated by city gates, just like this. And this was one of the gates that the British would have had to breach in order to enter the city-state of Kano. You can see the wooden beams. It wouldn't have been any easy feat in 1903. The military operation against Kano was Lugard's initiative. He had no approval from the British Colonial Office. He later claimed approval was slow to come. Lugard selected his trusted deputy, Colonel Morland. He dispatched him on the 2nd of February 1903 with officers, men, and Maxim guns from Zaria to Kano for the attack. Morland found that the emir had anticipated them. He had issued the command: "Death to any son of Kano who opens these blessed gates to the white men." Repeating Morland's order, the frightened translator shouted, "Open the gates." On Morland's command, troops took aim and fired. The British shelled the city walls continuously until the gates fell. Lugard himself was a couple of days behind Morland. There was no longer any significant resistance left in Zaria. The emir had left, and his right-hand man was cooperating with the British resident. Still, Lugard and his men were spoiling for a fight. Over the next 5 days, approximately 200 were killed without any British loss. In his own self-serving words, "Our little corps of mounted infantry had got into the Fulani and killed 200. This will be invaluable for the morale."
At that time, or before that time, the emir of Kano, Alu, traveled to Sokoto for reconciliation meeting because there was some kind of discomfort between the Emirate by then and the Sokoto area. So he went there to reconcile and sort out everything, which he did. He was there when British came to the Kabuga area. They conquered, they broke the gate of the city and entered into the city in the year 1903. From there, you came straight to the emir's palace. The emir was not around. Many people left some city. The soldiers occupied the palace.
Morland had quickly organized the remaining terrified Kano women and children into the new order. The entire 14 quarters of the city-state was now in an apprehensive state of alert, expecting British law to be laid down. It was the 6th of March, 1903, his moment in history. Lugard laid out the terms of his rule and of British sovereignty. Kano was now British. And so on a dusty, windy morning on the 15th of March, 1903, Lugard's men caught sight of the great Sultan Atahiru's cavalry, made up of reputedly 15,000 men on foot and on horseback. Lugard's men, just under 1,000 strong, officers and men, hundreds of rifles and 2 Maxim guns. That's right. 2 Maxim guns. What separated them was nothing but flatland. As they caught each other in sight, the one battle was inevitable. The battle that happened that morning was gruesome. Lugard versus Atahiru.
I found that the greater part of the country was under Muslim rulers who annually raided the pagan tribes for slaves with armies of horsemen said to number several thousand. I sent a letter to Sultan of Sokoto, courteously worded, but insisting that this slave trade raiding must cease. He replied curtly that between us there was only war.
From us to you, I do not consent that anyone from you should ever dwell with us. I will never agree with you. I will have nothing ever to do with you. Between us and you, there are no dealings except as between Muslimans and unbelievers. War, as God Almighty has enjoined on us, will prevail.
I had at my disposal a small native fort, which I had been instructed to raise in order to check French aggression. For at that time our relations with the French were very strained. The Muslims were defeated and the raiding was stopped.
Lugard's troops traveled southwesterly towards Arungungu. The Emir of Gwandu made it clear that he was prepared to fight alongside the Sultan's men. Lugard's advance party was made up of 650 men and 25 officers, hundreds of rifles and 2 Maxim guns. The Sultan Atahiru I of Sokoto made it clear to Lugard that the British were not welcome. On the 14th of March, 1903, a column of Lugard's army advanced. They caught the Caliphate headquarters in the horizon. They were met by the majestic sight of the Sultan's army, of 15,000 mounted cavalry and 3,000 footmen, resplendent in their hosiery, protective armor, and organized formations. The onslaught was terrible. Hundreds, probably thousands, lost their lives at the 15th of March battle as Atahiru fled with many soldiers and followers. Sokoto fell to the British. And yet Lugard was not satisfied. He pursued Atahiru to Burmi, far away in the Bauchi district, where the last stand would take place on July 27th. It was there along the Gongola River that the Sultan was killed during battle, along with the Mogaji Kafi and hundreds of other faithful. As soon as Lugard took Sokoto, he made his declaration. Just listen to what he says. The old treaties, he declared, are dead. You have killed them. Now these are the words which I, the High Commissioner, have to say for the future. The Fulani in old times under Danfodio conquered this country. They took the right to rule over it, to levy taxes, to depose kings, and to create kings. They in turn have by defeat lost their rule, which has come into the hands of the British. All these things which I have said the Fulani by conquest took the right to do, now pass to the British. Every Sultan and Emir and the principal officers of state will be appointed by the High Commissioner throughout all this country. Lugard's observations shows that in such a short space of time, mutual friendship based on similar interest of protecting their separate authorities developed between the British and the local royalty. Lugard originally preferred to call the territory Niger Sudan, but Flora Shaw, later his wife, she rejected the name because it might be confused, she said, with the already existing French Sudan, that ancient Greek philosophers coined the word Niger as referring to a river that was considered an extension of the Nile. Eventually, Lugard was to allow Flora Shaw to have her way and to name their new obsession Nigeria. Always candid with his wife, while recalling his life experience in Africa amongst the natives, he once said to her, "I have lived all my life largely amongst my inferiors." As an administrator, he chose a high hand and a low concern for Nigerians. The Sheikh of Borno was said to have stood in his magnificent splendor in front of Lugard. He held the Quran and gazed at Lugard with caution. "Is there anything that you want me to swear to that will interfere with Islam?" "No, nothing at all," Lugard replied. "I can assume the wishes of my forefathers without fear of betrayal?" Lugard responded with reverence, "Yes, Shehu." The monarch then solemnly stated, "I swear I shall observe your conditions and all you say." By 1912, Lugard was back, appointed the governor of northern Nigeria with a clear mandate to complete the task of unifying the territory into one administration. We're now here in what would have been the northernmost tip of southern Nigeria in 1913. Behind me is the town of Kishi in present-day Oyo State. And to my southeast is the town of Ilorin in present-day Kwara State. And to my northeast is the old military headquarters of the West African Frontier Force, the town of Jeba. And this, in December of 1913, would have meant that if I took a few steps before midnight, I'd be in northern Nigeria. The task of joining the two Nigerias into one had fallen on Lugard. After the joinder of the Lagos colony with southern Nigeria, the two Nigerias united together was going to create a large and significant territory. So significant, it was 5 times the size of England and Scotland joined together. A third of the size of British India, which itself is now 3 different countries. This was a significant territory. There's 17 million people with the population of 3,000 Europeans. Only 40% of them were involved in that British administration, the rest in commerce. The projected revenue of the United Nigerias in 1914 was to be £3 million, which in today's money is £300 million. This was not a little part of the empire. This was a significant part of the empire. That wasn't chicken change. It was Lugard's duty to make this dividing line disappear. Let's see how he did it.
We should not forget that the Nigeria we see on the map today as one country was not always so. It was not a country, but a mere geographical expression.
There's that phrase that Nigeria is a mere geographic expression, and it's often used dismissively to explain why there's problems with unity and poor performance. And It's credited to Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and I think it came from his book, The Path to Freedom. But every country is a work of fiction. Every country has artificial borders, and you can't find any country that everybody there is the same. Whether it's Belgium with the Flemish and the French, whether it's United Kingdom with the Welsh, the Scottish, the English, the Irish, there is no excuse for being put together by artificial borders for the performance of a country. And the phrase a mere geographic expression probably came originally from Lord Lugard in his amalgamation report of 1919. He had this to say: amalgamation, in my view, was not a mere political, geographical, or more especially a financial expression. I regarded it rather as a means whereby each part of Nigeria should be raised to the level of the highest place attained by any particular part. So he had every reason to think, quite rightly, that the joinder made everybody perform even better. The British were ebullient in victory, so much that Viscount Harcourt, the colonial secretary, had time for some after-dinner humour at the colonial service party. He said wryly, "We have released northern Nigeria from the leading strings of the treasury. The promising and well-conducted youth is now on an allowance, on his own, and is about to effect an alliance with a southern lady of means. I have issued the special license, and Sir Frederick Lugard will perform the ceremony. May the union be fruitful, and the couple constant. The Nigerias are not designed to be a great trust, but a great federation." October and November went by, and still there was no official intimation of what form amalgamation would take, or even when it would be effected. Joining up the pieces to make Nigeria was done in 2 stages. The Crown Colony of Lagos and the Protectorate was joined with the newly created Southern Protectorate to create Southern Nigeria in 1906. Southern Nigeria was then joined up with the old North Territories, now called Northern Nigeria. The proclamation ceremony was fixed for the 1st of January 1914, Amalgamation Day. The ceremony took place at the old colonial courthouse at the exact spot now occupied by Independence Fountain in Tinubu Square. Fortunately, we have the record of the speech that Sir Frederick Lugard delivered that morning of the 1st of January 1914. It's in his amalgamation report, and let's read a part of it here today. Today, Nigeria enters on a new stage of its progress, and we will all join in the earnest hope the era now inaugurated will prove not only a new departure in material prosperity, but also that the coming years will increase the individual happiness and the freedom from oppression, and raise the standard of civilization and of comfort of the millions who inhabit this large country. To these sole ends, the efforts of my colleagues and myself, with God's help, will be devoted. And those were Lugard's words. Who was later to turn out to be the most oppressive and uncivilized of all the governors of colonial Nigeria, had those words to say on the proclamation day here in Independence Square. You can still feel the power of this place. On Proclamation Day, just after the amalgamation was announced, on the 1st of January, Lugard and all the government top functionaries went to the government house, and there he swore in the Chief Justice and the Legislative Council. But it was back here, when he came back here, he must have understood the power and authority that he did have, because this was the central office of the colonial government of the newly formed Nigeria. And it was from here that the future and fortunes of the nation were going to be run for the next 56 years. And right there and then, on the 1st of January 1914, Lugard read King George's telegram. On the occasion of the formal amalgamation of the two Nigerias, I wish to convey to all the emirs, chiefs, and all the inhabitants of the new protectorate and colony my best wishes for their future happiness. Pray assure them of the greatest interest I take in all that concerns their welfare, and express my earnest hope that great prosperity may be in store for them. And with that, he departed by a motor car through the narrow streets lined mainly with soldiers and a pattering of the very apprehensive newly born Nigerians. Lugard didn't care for their views. He knew he had already applied for the government approval to remove the capital of Nigeria from this wretched place. Lugard was very concerned about European welfare. He was acutely aware that the white man's well-being would guarantee his performance, and in turn the performance of the colony's economy. He pressed Lord Harcourt for a policy of strict segregation. There will be a European town situated on the high ground on the left bank of the river, a native town situated on the right bank, and a town for native officials situated on the same side of the river of the adjoining native town.
Officials going to northern Nigeria and those going to southern Nigeria looked upon each other with equal contempt, I think. We never spoke to each other. We always took it for granted that all southern officials were rather fat, rather flabby, that they started drinking at 6 o'clock, while we never started before 6:30. In the north, we rode on horses. In the south, it is said that some officials were carried in hammocks.
Nigeria was one country by British law. Next, we see the crucial role women play in the making of Nigeria, in the country's first widespread civil disobedience, a movement organized, developed, and executed by the women of Nigeria.